interesting panel discussion session. We have eminent panelists from the industry and corporate world in the country who are going to discuss on digital transformation brings opportunity for the partners. The session is being moderated by Dr. Deepak Kumar Sahu, Editor-in-Chief VAR India, and the panelists are Mr. Vijay Sethi, CIO, CHRO and Head of CSR, Hero MotoCorp Limited, Mr. Jay Daga, VP Technology, Sony Pictures Networks Limited, Ms. Lata Singh, Executive Director, IBM Partner Ecosystem IBM India, Ms. Puneet Kaur Kohli, CTO Universal Sompo General Insurance, Mr. Rishi Mehta, Advisor Digital Transformation Wellspun USA. Now over to Dr. Sahu.
I'll introduce Puneet. She's from Universal Sampo, and Mr. Vijay Sethi sir, Jante Hero Motors, and Mr. Lata Singh is from IBM. And Jai Daga is from Sony Pictures Network. With this, we are going to start our panel discussion. So the topic we have already mentioned, like how digital transformation is bringing newer opportunities for the partners. Partners, when we mean that is a B2B partners, because corporates, they do service, but the business has last mile connected by the B2B partners. So this we are going to showcase the panel discussion in our partner largest event in India, that StarNet Award. We are expecting about 500 B2B partners to attend the session. So let me introduce about the session. What is that mean? Digital transfer brings newer opportunity. To introduce with this COVID-19 has proven to be a greater catalyst for technical adoption, for embracing the strategy for digital transformation, starting from managing remote workforce, customers and partners, and numerous functions that had not ever been considered before. People have been forced to increasingly use technology to conduct business and in their everyday life. Given the changes in lifestyle being fashioned by the pandemic, the concept of livability is evolving into a new term. Workability relates to new realities that employees face. In terms of working from home, sometimes for prolonged period of time, this means they are likely to consider factors other than livability alone, such as the work from home environment and access to quality technology infrastructure. The transformation is bringing the change business needs not only survive but thrive. Collaboration between enterprises, modern ways of engaging with the customer base, more innovation within the workforce itself, and the ability to draw valuable insights from captured data are just some of the key benefits helping business grow. On this backdrop, let's discuss on this line. Anyone can pick up. We have only five. We can pick up. To start with, the question is, my first question would be, do you think digital transformation and cloud planning are at the heart of all business strategies?
Does anyone want to take it? Sethi sab aap lenge?
Okay, sure.
I can start otherwise.
I'm okay to start.
Please.
Okay. So Deepak, as I see digital transformation in today's time, all the organizations have to do it. It's kind of mandatory, not just for the growth of the business, but for the survival of business as such. Because whether it is my customers, other stakeholders, everybody's expectations from the organizations, from the products, from the services have changed so much that if organizations do not use digital technologies to transform them and transform them digitally, the organizations will not exist. So that's where companies have to work. And now the second part where you said cloud planning. See, when I talk about digital transformation, cloud, mobile, these are some of the basic foundations of any digital transformation. So you can't really be doing a huge sort of analytics, can't get into artificial intelligence, can't get into IoT without having a cloud strategy. So what companies today as part of the first step of digital transformation are working on a kind of cloud first strategy, a mobile first strategy. So to my mind, answer is yes to both the questions. That number one, digital transformation is something which each organization needs to do. And cloud planning has to be a mandatory part of the entire digital transformation.
Okay, how you will put, Mr. Puneet, your views?
Yeah, thank you first of all, Deepak, for the opportunity, and good evening to all my co-panelists. Yes, I second that with Mr. Vijay. first mobile first technologies should definitely be the first prerogative for an organization, especially to lead the digital organization, like the digital transformation. Because if one has to be competitive in the market, go to market strategy is pretty good. Then in terms of the product lines that business wants today, so it's a co-creation model where it's not only about the technology which plays the business role, it's like vice versa. It's a combination of business plus IT collaboratively delivering a product, and it has to be within 72 to 72 hours, or probably 3 to 4 working days the product has to be live. And only then cloud is becoming a technology where you can on your basis you can scale up, scale down your campaigns, any times of workloads, whatever be the size in and signs out, scale in, scale out. It's all because of cloud technologies. So adaptation to cloud is something which is the need of the hour today. And apart from that, digital transformation, especially with regard to financial services, I can say that the myth that people had, like the digital transformation, that cloud is somewhere not secured. Yes, anything which is in the jurisdiction of home country localization, the customer data is privately is being put on the cloud. It's only that when we sign with the cloud providers, we cannot be blind towards it. We should be knowing what kind of agreement that we are signing. So it is like a trust factor, definitely, which works on the cloud providers. But the agreement, when we enter with them, what kind of data which we are hosting on the cloud, that one should be very clear. What data is going on the cloud, that localization or that hosting, a CTO or an IT technology head should be very well versed with.
Right. So, Ms. Lata, what is your perception?
I would agree with both of them. One is digital transformation is obviously fueled by the adoption of cloud, and therefore the cloud planning has to be a key to it, right? Not just the cloud part of it, but the entire technology areas of IoT, AI, and the others that the organizations are adopting. A critical piece of that entire digital journey or digital transformation that organizations are doing is the architecture, and that's where the cloud planning falls into the architecture side, right? What are you deploying now? What are you building now? Will it last you for future? Will you be able to keep that architecture from where you're building it to? Can you deploy it, as Puneet said, as you move forward? Can you keep your own key, right? Do you want to have control over the data that you have? And that is very critical. So I would say is digital transformation is fueled by cloud adoption, and therefore cloud becomes an integral part of how you plan out your cloud. Is it private cloud, hybrid cloud, public cloud? And that has to be the architecture that defines your strategy for moving forward.
Jay, what do you think, since you are into the entertainment industry?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. Deepak, and as Vijay, Puneet, and everyone said, digital transformation is here and now. It has not been, and especially in this industry, earlier it was more like a traditional way, confined, whether it's infra, whether it was real estate, whether it was technology, or whether it was, so it was all more confined to it. But now things have changed. The digital transformation has taken a lot of pace. Cloud adoption has also increased. Obviously, there are apprehensions still. One of the areas which cloud, maybe a lot of service providers are a bit lacking, is to cater to this kind of industry, when it's not only storage hungry, it's bandwidth hungry, but also the time to market is very fast. So that is one of the reasons which is still on. I'm not saying no one is addressing it, it's being addressed, but maybe it has to be fast tracked now on the cloud side. But having said that, mindset of overall, I would say this industry has changed a lot with this pandemic, wherein you can be remotely working from anywhere. You can have your infra and applications anywhere, but you have to make sure the delivery happens on the very fast pace. That's one part. Second is, to my experience, what I've seen is digital transformation in this area or this industry was like going for a very big bang approach, spread over 1 or 2 years or 3 years, and then take it up. But as Puneet rightly said, is now the approach has changed. Don't go for a big bang approach. Maybe go for a stepwise digital transformation, but make sure that lasts at least for 4 to 5 years. The impact of is there, and you get the revenue and the cost efficiency into that. So I am seeing a sea change into this area in this industry now, especially with all the board members aligned to having a digital transformation throughout the organization.
Good. So Rishi, you have to give your perspective. Like this, all you have heard from the in Indian industry, like Mr. Vijay Shetty is from the automobile industry, IBM Lata is from IBM, and Mr. Puneet is from insurance industry. Jai is from the media entertainment industry. So you have seen how Indian industries are working. So you have to give a perspective how, whether it's a digital transfer you speak or you talk as a super transformation or any transformation, you give us a light.
Yes, yes. No, I think all very valid and I would say rich comments from the panelists. Let me take this perspective. I would say, digital transformation was always there. Even if it was at a basic level 10 years ago, people had to grapple with the tools. And now it's going through a very sophisticated journey. And I think it's coming because of, even our customers, I would say. Look at what's happening even in the pandemic and COVID around the world. Our customers haven't stopped from asking us the services. Whether they are shopping online, whether they want to subscribe to the movies, whether they are asking for other services. Rather, I would say some services have even gone up more than the previous times. And the best way to deliver is our companies have to, service companies, product companies, technology companies, they have to become very agile in how they deliver the services. And digital transformation is actually still the mantra to adopt. And I would say the pace has become even more rapid. So I think there is no going back. This is not a reversible process. We really can't turn around now. The only way forward is forward actually, and how we go about doing it. Cloud is definitely one of those tools, as all of you have expressed. I used to see, to be honest, a lot of sentiment against public cloud in Asia. I've dealt with customers around the world. Asia was the last one, especially Indian region, if I look at it, was the last one to come on board, primarily because of security reasons. That was one reason. And second used to be the cost as well. Before we had the infrastructure in place, the cost of delivery, especially in India and region around it, from the cloud was still very expensive. Now, the beautiful thing about cloud that's happening, I would say cloud is also going through a massive transformation where you see now the instances of cloud coming on-prem also or closer to the prem. And that is the whole concept of an edge cloud. What you hear from AWS Wavelength, AWS Outpost, those kind of scenarios where anything that's latency sensitive can go on an edge compute, like multi-access edge compute right on the premises, on the enterprise, or very next to it, instead of a central public cloud. So I think some organizations, even who won't adopt the public cloud fully, they will have to adopt the concepts of a cloud in a box on the premises. And cloud, as some of you expressed, is all about scale, turning in and off some of the services right away in a very agile manner. And I think those are the attributes, the microservices, those are the attributes we will have to adopt as organizations, whether we do that through a common central place like a public cloud, or we do it a mix of a public cloud and something on the edge compute on our premises. I think this is the one way forward. You will see multiple examples of this: IoT, 5G, any of these technologies which are coming along. They will force us to look at cloud in a very, very distributed manner moving forward. So totally with you guys. And when I try to look at this from customer point of view, even the COVID journey, I think my ideas match with you exactly. It's just that the shape and form may change from the public cloud to a mix of a public and edge compute.
Okay, to move forward, the second question is how the emerging technologies are accelerating the pace and potential for value creation. We'll start with Puneet.
Yeah. So emerging technologies definitely is a very big, I say that it's a boon which is coming in especially with regard to digital transformation and total zero manual intervention. So I have the success story, especially with the advent of, the three musketeers. You talk about cloud, DevOps, and you can say agile. This is the forward step, you can say. So we call it as a three musketeers. So basically, RPA, robotics process automation, definitely is playing a very big role. IoT in its fall, the video augmented virtual reality, especially in our scenarios, basically it has really fueled a very big way, because our claim settlement, especially the claim settlement. People wanted, they are sitting in their homes and they would like to settle their claims, especially with regard to motor claim, POSPs and all that stuff. So augmented and virtual reality is something which was the need of the hour. We implemented video streaming, something on that where, the live, the 3D effect was being given to the people to settle the surveyors are everything. One ecosystem and the settlement of the claims is, really happening in a quick of time, rather than, people used to come and, the survey used to happen and the claim used to happen. So it's like policy issuance, all into automated. So I think so, something which is RPA, intelligence, which is and something is that these technologies not developed by IT. The beauty of these technologies are that people who are core with good domain knowledge, with the basic knowledge of Python, they can develop their engines, which can give faster decision engines. Necessarily not need to be having a good, BTech or MTech knowledge or a technical knowledge. If they have the domain expertise and we have a combination of a developer, he defines what the algorithm he has to do, which he's been using for last 10 years. He can define how he can make his core engine to run, from onboarding to claim settlement, or you can say from, up to the engagement, service management also. All these things are possible only because of these new age technologies. So I must say that it's a real big boon, especially the RPA analytics, or, the scorecards, then your artificial and machine language, and then now, speech to text and text to, we are doing a speech to text engines, which is coming, and, the automated virtual reality that we are talking about. These are some pillars, and digital twins, which is giving a faster decisions also. Some adaptations are taking time for the companies, but there are companies who are really finding, because people in the organization are feeling that if we get introduced to these new age technologies, they will lose their job. That is some kind at the back of their mind. They're having this mindset that, like, the operations people will lose their job. But then if we can give them good job rotation, succession planning, then definitely, those people can be utilized in some other domains. So this is what we have done, and the success stories are there.
Wonderful. So, Mr. Sethi, you must have a different experience.
Okay, so what is value? So value is that in case I'm investing, say, 100 rupees, can I get 200 rupees, 1000 rupees, 5000 rupees worth back? Reality is that most of these technologies give a huge value to the organization. I'll give you a few examples. RPA is what Puneet just spoke about. RPA is giving a huge value to enhance the efficiency and productivity within the organization from a customer service perspective. So instead of, say, settling so many claims, or in our case, ensuring that all the trucks which are coming in, you don't have to put in all those manpower, everything else. So it gives a huge value. But to my mind, the biggest value which is coming in today's time is from artificial intelligence, from analytics, the amount of customer experience or the customer facing technologies, which are really helping the organization to enhance customer experience in a big way. Pick up that data about sentiments and all other stuff about the customer, which will help us, which is helping us not just in improving the customer satisfaction, but also improving our products in a big way. IoT is another technology which really gives a huge value. Otherwise, for example, when we put in IoT on some of these machines, it has helped us in reducing the downtime of the machine. Otherwise, one would not even know. There could be a lot of unplanned downtime. Now with the analytics, you can know that this machine is likely to get into a downtime. So we do a preventive maintenance much before that. Or to ensure that even the usage of electricity within the organization, because of all the monitoring based on sensors which is being done, it really helps. And then there are tons of other technologies which are giving huge value. So we were, as some of you would know, that around 5 years back, I'd put in one of the robots, physical robot, as one of my own team members. So I have a physical robot, which is one of my team members. And the robot really helps us in doing a lot of trainings, so all the induction trainings. So I don't have to really invest that kind of time and energy. So that's the basic value. But technologies are like AR, VR. So today, in today's time, when everybody is working from home, so sitting at their home, they can really look at what is happening in an R&D, details of all the products, right up to the minutest detail on a particular barcode. So you can watch it from your home, and then all the people can collaborate. All the collaboration technology is giving a huge value. And especially what we have seen in last 9 months is that the value that the technology has brought in, because people are working from home and collaborating a lot, that is showing as to what value the digital technologies can bring to the table. At the same point, of course, you have to work on security and other stuff. But reality is, all these technologies today are bringing huge value, and technologies also have matured a lot over the years.
Good. So Mr. Jay must have got a different experience in the entertainment industry. If you can share experience.
Yeah, sure. So to add to what Vijay said, one of the other advantage of this advanced or the you can technology takes is it creates or adds a lot to the brand value. It creates a brand experience and a brand value to it, whether it's AR, VR, or mixed reality and those kind of stuff. But just give an example. When in Y Committee, I was heading this digital brand services where we were experimenting with a lot of these technologies. And we did a small project with Skepic, which is now been acquired by Flipkart, of AR and where any customer sitting at their home can go and experience the complete set. They will see themselves sitting in front of the celebrity host and those kind of stuff. So that created a lot of different experience and a lot of it. So, and as Rishi mentioned, we are almost on even in India, we are kind of on the advent of 5G technology, which will create this is a game changer in this area of advanced technologies, whether you call it mixed reality or gamification, or whether you call it a user experience. It's going to be almost multi-fold change. So that's the experience we have, wherein we are seeing a lot of shift of marketing area. We are getting into this using of advanced technologies. And one of the, just last week when I was talking to on one of the panel for this cloud, and one of the things I think the cloud providers can bring on a table is giving a kind of a testing or a production lab to companies like media companies, wherein they want to do a lot of experimenting, create MVPs of these areas. So that's where we are working with a lot of academics, trying to get collaboration with them, as well as trying to collaborate with cloud providers to create this testing environment and production labs.
Oh, okay, wonderful. So, Mrs. Lata, you must have a difference actually because you are the innovator of emerging technologies.
Yeah, I do. And while I totally agree with all the three panelists who have spoken, I'll just twist it a bit around on the value because obviously in the insurance, banking and manufacturing and automobile industry, as well as obviously in the media and entertainment, everyone is using different levels of technologies as they emerge. And the first part is, are you, like Puneet said, doing it fast and fail fast and try it out and do it. But when I really look at value, and I'll address a few of the new emerging technologies that we're working on, and this is if you really look at all our farmers, right? And we're looking at the impact of weather on the farmers or the agriculture produce. And we understand that it's a very high dependency on weather for our farmers and the agriculture crop. And that also, Puneet, relates back to insurance as a segment as they provide insurance to the farmers, is the fact that weather has a big impact on the farmers, right? So IBM has developed weather monitoring tools. So what we've done with the Ministry of Agriculture is worked on precision agriculture. That means we are taking data from multiple global satellites, and along with the weather data, we are actually giving information to the farmers on the data, right, on the weather. And this is not 30 days later others. This is regular information that they need. One is obviously to look at the rainfall and predict. The second is obviously the risk that may apply as well. Now, this we've already done a pilot of precision agriculture. We've worked with Ministry of Agriculture for both Rajkot, Nanded, Bhopal, and Varanasi. So that's been successfully implemented. And I think this is value to the farmers as you look at it. The other area that we are working on is with Karnataka Agriculture Price Commission. This is around the tomato production to develop an advanced first of its kind forecasting system. Now, what we're doing is we're taking the weather monitoring tools of the farmers and agri-tech, and we're looking at obviously the data or I would call it the sub-acre level of the soil as well as the weather monitoring and looking at the produce. We're also looking at data of the price of tomatoes, not within the state also, but around it, and therefore assisting and coming up with a dashboard for price prediction analytics. Now that is something that we're using. The dashboard combines IBM Graph, it's a supercomputing model, and the weather company data. It uses AI predictive analytics, ML, IoT, remote sensing, and cloud to bridge the gap between the farmer and the supply chain. So I would say this is creating a value through new age technology. The second part, and that is very critical, is blockchain, right? And if we look at the supply chain, is really critical in any industry, right? And that will definitely, what we're now testing at this point of time is supply chain resiliency. The other is also is how do we get what we get and from where, and that's where the blockchain entry of supply chain also comes in. And because we do have a media entertainment person here, and I did talk about the digital rights, that's the other piece of the blockchain that is very important, is how are we digitally protecting, right? With content available for everyone to download, is the right value being given to the producers of art as well? So I would say there are adoptions of new technology till it gets into the mainstream. We are at IBM obviously looking at how we get the adoption to a larger scale to provide value to the industry as well as to the citizens, because it is good tech. The other part is how are we really looking and supporting the last mile engagement happening as well. So definite adoption happening across portfolios. We talked about security, and I do want to mention, Puneet, you talked about security on the cloud, and all of us know security is a big risk. And I would say we should really look at quantum proof security in the future. So quantum proof encryption as we move forward, maybe not now, but 4 to 5 years later. That would be the, again, area that we are working on.
Content.
In fact, we are working also in the crop insurance for with the drones and satellites. We are working at Karnataka and satellite. We are doing it with you only.
So I thought that would be a good example for us to talk about, because that is good tech.
Yeah.
We see you must have something in your mind to evaluate the things. If you can put some light.
No, I think this esteemed team has already shared very good examples. Let me take a little bit slightly different perspective also to add to it. One, I liked Mr. Sethi's comments on the value creation. Let's start with the value creation we are doing for the end customers. And then, it automatically leads to the value creation that an organization is doing it internally to fulfill the customer, right? I think we as an industry, if I look at it globally, including Indian industry, we are doing a great job when it comes to value creation towards solving the problem of a customer when we're about to deliver something in the form of a product, technology, or service. But we are not doing a great job when it comes to post-sale services. If you look critically across us, to be honest, I see this phenomenon around the world, and India by no means is an exception. I go back and forth between India and US every few weeks and months. Customers are facing across various industries post-sales crisis. They are very unhappy with the customer experience they go through. I think one very critical aspect of value creation, besides solving the relevant problems, is actually the customer experience as well, the usability and the customer experience. And I think we as an industry need to improve, I feel, on the customer experience through the combination of these emerging technologies and the human touch. It needs to go a long way. I think that's where we can start adding more and more into customer lifetime value. And I think that leads to a bigger value creation, to be honest, across the entire chain of, customer, us as an organization which is delivering, then our suppliers. I think that's an area we need to improve upon with the combination of our emerging technologies and the human touch.
Okay. So good, Rishi. Now my third question would be how to address increasing fraud and social engineering threat in the mobile channel. I'll start with Puneet.
Can you repeat the question once again? Sorry for that.
How to address increasing fraud and social engineering threat in the mobile channel.
Okay, so one thing is definitely that mobility is definitely the need of the, I think so almost like 7 to 8 years. It's been 10 years that, everybody is using mobile apps, or, people are feet on street, especially when they are on using their tabs, or you give them any convenience, and then they, when they meet up with their customers. So something which is the biggest thing is the data that is flowing and we are sharing it with our customers when we say that, like, person, when they, the feet on street, meet up with the end customers and they ask them that, like, if he's a prospect or we want to do some kind of a need analysis for them, and you help them to come on your corporate applications, core applications there. If it is a policy where the company provided tabs are there, or it is a mobility which is being provided by a self, MDM or a data leakage prevention really plays a very big role. Where segregation of a professional data and personal data or the corporate data has to be segregated. And that awareness should definitely be given when we are putting those technologies in place. And the ultimate users, who are the end users, should be, giving this awareness that, how we have to segregate the two. Secondly, about the awareness about the data which is flowing from B2B to customer facing applications, etc. It is not about the internal customers. It is also about the external customers. I would agree with Rishi that customer engagement, that how, you have a retention with your customers, more and more engagement, how you can give you a personal touch. One touch, you can say by video calling or, by personalized search, you can create such kind of an awareness even in your customers as well, to understand that if you are on a social media, how, your data can be breached, or, you're basically, giving an, you're allowing your personal data on the cloud or anything. That means you're opening up your complete personalization. So, personalization, personalized web 5.0 talks about all these things, which is personalized engines, personalized awareness, and the tools to be used in terms of your ecosystem, where, people will be giving that a personalized touch would be given, where, people don't have to walk into even at the doorstep of the malls also. Supposing they have to do shopping. So on the e-commerce platform, people say that I'm interested. So personalized humanoids, which is like Mr. Vegi was talking about, a humanoid should be able to understand and make them understand that this is your personalized, what exactly is your behavior patterns. When you do a complete, historical depth of the complete customer, about his entire journey. And there could be some, prospects also who may not be interested to, get even filtered or get by them. So fraud, governance, all this comes into one basket, where we have to be very, very vigilant, because it's all about an ecosystem which is where all our endpoints are getting connected today, because flexibility of working from anywhere is, we don't know which device are we, touching our corporate. So cyber security, information security, personalization, all these form a part of these, fraud and risk detection.
Okay, right.
Definitely.
So Sethi, you have a different prospect, like increase how to control, because you have a large chain of showroom and very large network. You must have a different experience. Can you share your experience?
I think if you have to protect from frauds and cybersecurity, experience would be same irrespective of whatever you may have, because the basics remain same everywhere. So if you look from the mobile security and the social engineering piece that you spoke about, the basics would be that, okay, you need to concentrate first on the people part, because your biggest threat in this entire thing in today's times is all the phishing, whether it's a phishing SMS, whether it's a phishing call, wishing, whatever you may call it. People are careless while they share whether an information, whether an OTP, and we have seen so many frauds over last maybe last 1-2 months, where OTP frauds, WhatsApp OTP frauds have really grown through the roof in the country. So, and people tend to be careless, not because they want to be careless, but most of the people think that it will not happen to me, it will happen to someone else. So that is, I think, you need to be aware. So biggest is awareness piece. Second link part is the technology piece, where technology also plays a huge role, which means that in your apps, on your browsing sites, if I'm doing anything on mobile, and of course the same thing would apply for laptops and others also, but since you spoke about mobile, how many people really put an antivirus or any other technology on their mobile? I guess very, very few. Most of them won't even know that mobile has a separate antivirus.
Maybe 3 to 5%.
Yeah. So which means that you are actually giving everything on a platter to the person who wants to hack into your system. Third, when I download so many apps on my mobile, on my smartphone, and most of the people today carry smartphone irrespective, how do I ensure that those apps are actually secure, or they are carrying some malware, something which will actually pick up data from your thing? The fourth, and I'll just give 2 or 3 more. The fourth is when I actually give my permissions on various apps, what do I do? Without even thinking, I just give all possible permissions. And when I give all possible permissions, I don't know what data and what is going where. How many of us actually, when we work on a mobile, are really careful that there's no one around us who's listening to our conversations? Which also gives, from a social engineering, the other point that you spoke about. So people many times are not really careful. So that's another piece which will leads to ensuring that there are a lot of frauds that are happening. So whether it is the people part, whether it is the technology part, and from the process part, my only thing would be that, especially from a mobility perspective, how many of us really get into the process, even from the corporate data, how many of us really segregate on our mobile phones that this particular section is a mobile or personal, this is professional. So you have tons of tools like MDM and others which are available today, which can do all those things. But how many of us really get into that? I've not, for the earlier one, for my antivirus, you said 3 to 5%. Over here, I'll say maybe less than 1% people. So when you're making everything insecure, the chances of your fraud on a mobile are very, very high. And the last piece, which I'll say, is that mobile is one device that now there are a lot of people who might be carrying 2 phones, 3 phones, whatever phones. And when you're talking to someone, you're going into a market or even in your car, the chances of the mobile as such getting lost, getting stolen is very, very high. So which means that the physical safety, that was never an issue when you're having a PC. With laptop, it increased because in the car there could be theft, but in case of mobile, you can actually lose that device anytime. So people, process, technology, and the physical safety, all the 4 things have to be taken care to ensure that your mobile is safe. But the biggest in all this is people, because to my mind, 90-95% of frauds happen because of ignorance of people and not because of the other 3 things.
Right. So Lata might have noticing that there is a good opportunity for a BU I want to start. Okay, if IBM will start with the mobile security division, people, they will go for it, because small companies, when they talk about the security, people, they don't accept it. If IBM will speak, then people, they may accept it. So what is your views, Lata?
So Sethi Saab talked about the work profile or personal profile on the laptop, and that's where we have the on the mobile, and that's where we have the MAS 360, which enables and ensures it. And in fact, IBM deploys it internally for all employees as well. The moment, by the way, you are accessing the wrong information, it gets, all your data of official gets deleted automatically, right? It just, so when an employee joins and they are using their mobile phone, MAS 360 is actually deployed automatically. That's when you can actually use the IBM authorized applications on the phone as well. But I think the overall context of what Mr. Sethi said is very critical, because we talked about the journey to the cloud, and as organizations are moving to the cloud, the lack of perimeter is obviously there. But when you really look at security, right, the perimeter totally disappears, right? Because we are now in an arena where everyone is working from home, right? And even if you are not working from home, the amount of applications that are available to the users is so much, and the integration between applications is so much, that rather than have one access to the data, you have multiple access to the data. Now, therefore, you have so many more points to protect, right? And therefore, the number 1 rule is never trust, always verify, zero trust, right? And I think it's important how we implement that, because one is moving to the cloud is happening faster. The digital form factor is always there, right? And more touch points, more integration points. That means each point needs to be verified. And that interaction or engagement that needs to happen between people and devices, like we said, can be laptops, can be your mobiles, can be also by the fact that all of us are on Zoom, and the Zoom asks you, can we access all the information? So you your information is accessed through multiple points. And therefore, it's important to say, is the right person accessing the right data under the right circumstances and at the right time? You may have access to the data, but at what time are you accessing that data could also needs to be verified. And I think that's a very important responsibility for all of us as IT IT organizations, as well as the CIOs, the ones CIOs in deploying the zero trust policy across the organization. Because ultimately, you are looking at data, you're looking at application and infrastructure, all of it being secure as you move into a private cloud, public cloud, and a hybrid cloud model. So I would say data access, data right to the right data, as well as at what time, because you need to verify, right? You may have access, the verification is important. Therefore, I would say you need to manage it, you need to modernize, and you also need to protect your data, because that is key. So that's all that I have, is at all points it needs to be done. So we may call it only social engineering or mobile data, or how do you secure your mobile, but it is securing the backend application infrastructure and the data as you develop those applications is very critical.
Thank you. Jay, what is your view on it?
Yeah, so Deepak, there are three areas of, I would say, fraud or kind of in our industry. One is obviously the data of the employees, which is all your corporate data and those kind of data, which can go into phishing and it can lead to leak of those. Second is we do have a lot of customer information, personal information. That's also very critical to secure those, because that's very open, very openly shared by the customers with some terms and conditions, but it has to be very clear. And third, which is less of fraud, but more of a very, very critical area, is the piracy. How do I control the content piracy when it is there and when people are minting a lot of money through piracy? How do we go ahead and do it? And there are a lot of boutique players who kind of give you this information as to, but at a certain point, you have to control with the help of people, process, and technology, all these areas. So like when I say, if I talk about piracy, the way we use the technology is to try to watermark the content, use it, whether it's cloud or whether it's on premise or those areas, we try to watermark the content. That's one part. When you talk about the process or some technologies to be put into the organization, so we did go with MDM, especially when this pandemic hit, because a lot of our information is on mobility, whether it's laptop or mobile. A lot of information can be shared via this BYOD channel, and obviously phishing and those kind of attacks are always common. Top of it, in this industry, there is a lot of social engineering used there, wherein try to brainstorm to get a leak of information, to get a leak of some kind of I would say, episode information and those kind of stuff. That becomes very critical, wherein social engineering plays a very important part. And everyone wants to go into a fame, very short fame, by leaking out the viral video and those kind of stuff. So that area is also very critical, and we try to keep a lot of channels to avoid social engineering, and also make sure that we have got very focused group in the organization. So one of the area which is heavily bet upon in media and entertainment is the vigilance as well as the compliance part of it, wherein they really look, it's a very strong team with a lot of these people who do digital forensics and those kind of stuff, to make sure this piracy and leakage of information is very much controlled.
Okay. So Rishi, what is your perspective?
Yes, I think it resonates quite a lot with what team members have shared. And let me put forward how I look at this problem. I think we as an industry look at it in a very piecemeal and fragmented manner. Like a few years ago, we talked about, security threat coming from inside the company on the corporate network. Then we talked about, outside the network. Then we start talking about now these handheld devices, phones. In my opinion, in the next 2-3 years, then we'll start talking about other connected devices, be it drones, IoT sensors. People in the COVID times are putting thermal detection cameras to check your temperature from far off. They're putting computer vision technologies across smart manufacturing floors, venues like stadiums, railway places, bankings, other areas. All these will become areas of actually threat, not just the mobile phones. Right? There'll be more machines connected to our networks than even mobile phones in the coming time frame. Right? More billion of devices that will be talking to the intranet as well as the internet. They're all places of threat. And when I say fragmented, I think we will be as an industry looking at all these machines outside of these mobile devices pretty soon. That will become a talk again. So I wish we had this mindset of security first, how we talk about mobile first, how we talk about cloud first, how we talk about, whether Wi-Fi first versus cellular first. I wish we started with security first. So, and I tend to agree a lot with what Mr. Sethi said. We can put all the technologies we want for the threat detection and the recovery from there on, using some of the emerging technologies of data science and AI to check the abnormal patterns that are happening on our data plane, control plane, management plane. It's not about data theft alone. It's about control and management plane hacks as well. The challenge is the person who's attacking, the entities who are attacking, they have the same tool sets with them. They have the same data science, they have analytics, they have AI at their disposal. So this will become the same problem that we have seen in the virus and antivirus industry for the last so many years. It has not gone away. The virus and antivirus industry, big money has been put into it by companies like Microsoft. So I think this is going to stay with us as an industry if we can learn to have this security first mindset, train our processes and employees to look for that abnormal pattern from day one, besides inculcating that process into a product development, into a service development, into a delivery mechanisms as we move forward. I think that will become a very holistic and integral approach. And then this AI, ML, data science, they are just tools in my mindset to help you with that journey. So
Wonderful. So it's a very good input. And my last question, which will be very short, like lastly, how the technology acceleration could bring an opportunity for the B2B partners in the country? I'll start with Lata.
I thought you'd talk with the people who would be there, but I think it's an important point, and all of us touched on various areas as CIOs that we're looking at the business side of it. But the key part is, are the partners scaling their skill set? And Rishi talked about delivery, and two, three things that I think, Deepak, I've been talking through the various sessions that we've done is the key is capability or the skills that you're building, right? One is on existing skill set that you have. Two is on future technology areas that are going to become mainstay. And are you building, one is future proof of skills that you need to build, because you need to, as organizations, evolve or pivot towards what your clients are looking at skill set, and how are you building those. The second is what you have, how are you honing that skill set to address the fact that it would be integrating with multiple other areas that are coming in. And I talked about multiple integration points opening. So I would say B2B, the critical part for our channel partners is skill set. It doesn't matter which segment of the industry you are in. You could be a startup, or you could be looking at, am I an infrastructure player now? But infrastructure also, you need to look at now the entire piece that Mr. Sethi talked about, right? Are you monitoring it right? Are you using the AI on the monitoring side to be able to deliver faster, because the SLAs are no longer going to be the SLAs of the past, right? It's going to be of the future. So are you building even your skill set on the core of your competency where you build business? Because that is an evolving map. Two is, what are the areas that with the 5G rollout happening, with IoT coming in, are you looking at building that set of skill set? And partners who are in security, I think there is really a shortage of skill sets around security, and we talked about the importance of skill set, and I can assure partners is, wherever there is skill set on security or analytics, all we need are right execution, right delivery, and the ability to handhold customers through the entire process of delivery, because it's no longer about selling a solution or doing the pre-sales, but the gaps that arise is when you're delivering it. The handover that happens doesn't happen, right? And I think that is the piece that is very critical. The second is, and during one of the sessions that I was doing with one of the larger SIs, is the fact that, look, in the digital world, everyone has a view of what you have delivered and how successfully have you delivered. So your branding has to come from the fact that you have been able to do projects around a certain technology area, but the fact that you've been able to deliver to what you committed is the most important. And all the virtual engagements that we're doing, we all talk about successful projects, not just what you've done one of a kind and forgotten about it. So your branding as an organization needs to be someone who is able to deliver to what they commit to the end client. I think that is the most important.
So I will check from Mr. Sethi. What is your expectation from the B2B partners?
See, as I see digital for the B2B partners, the biggest opportunity that they have, especially in COVID times when people are not getting business, they have a huge opportunity and they can really tap this opportunity to get business. But will they get it? I'm not too sure. So let me just put in 5 points, and I fully agree with what Lata just now said, 100% agree. So the first is, are these partners really geared up today to give a value delivery to the business? Are they really wanting to just implement solutions, or actually say that if you implement this, this is how I'm delivering value to the business of the client? And for that, whether it is project management, all those things are part of that. So that is one. So they need to really start with value delivery rather than implementing of a solution. The second is knowledge and skill set. I think Lata really spoke about that in a great detail. The reality is that a lot of partners do not have much knowledge or skill sets about the new technologies. So you can go and talk to them about the earlier technology, they'll say all those things are there. But when you talk to them about artificial intelligence, blockchain, maybe their knowledge may be 1 day or 5 days or 1 month more than whatever your team has. That's all. So I think partners need to significantly enhance their knowledge and skill set in a big way. The third is availability of people. Are really people available today with partners? Or is it that when you ask them, the same guy is being presented to 5 clients and they say that, okay, this is there, this is there, this is not there, he's on bench, she's on bench, he's there, not there. So availability has to be ramped up. And the last piece to my mind, which partners really need to look at, is the attitude of the people, the consultants. A lot of time I've seen that the attitude of the consultants is either too lethargic or too negative or too arrogant or too full of themselves. So which would mean that when you have all those things, even you may be the most brilliant consultant, actually when they come into our organization, they will not fit into it. They'll not be able to deliver. So to my mind, for partners, there's a huge opportunity, especially in today's time in this business, but they need to significantly work on knowledge, skills, availability, attitude, and their project management to ultimately give delivery to the business.
Right, you are right. So what is your experience, Puneet? You have been working with so many B2B partners. What is your experience?
So my experience has been the same. What I agree with Mr. Vijay Sethi again, that the attitude is something, unless, they will give you a whole lot of commitments. They will show you, the skies and the moons and the stars. But it comes to the real delivery of things, the program management is itself missing. The governance part of it is still, it's not being taken very seriously. So I believe, I'm a huge believer in a bot model, which is build, operate, and transform. So that has been very successful, where I fulfill the lack of skill set availability with people, with acquiring small fintech companies or tech enabled companies who specialize only in that particular technology and domain. And domain is something where I give them experience, where I put my core teams, and they create a co-creation model, and we hire the best practices, and our IPR remains in-house, which is a hybrid approach. I will take people on staff augmentation 6 months, 1 year, based on the till the maturity level of my internal team members, till the time they become self-sufficient to take on their own and do a process discovery and understand what is the use case of which technology and what value creation it will be bringing to the table along with the business stakeholders. Unless that is not coming from inside and that program manager is not deciding, I think so then all kind of on-sourcing and outsourcing is all, it's just the need of the hour. It's just about the same person will get introduced to, the same person will be introduced to my competitors, and the people will be interested. What is she doing? What is he doing? This is something, which is spreading a non-governance kind of an attitude amongst the competitors. That is one thing. Then market the go-to-market competitive strategy. Basically, yes, he has launched something. Where am I? You have to see your culture. Is your company really ready? Not that the entire world is moving. So you also see You have to see from which ecosystem, who are your real ultimate users to use this technology. Are they geared up to use this technology? Is it worth spending crores of rupees in that technology? Are we really up to it or not? So this is something which really one has to understand about the 360-degree approach of the external ecosystem, your partners ecosystem, your governance, your awareness, everything. And unless this homework is not done, it's all about zero effectivity. What I say.
Right, right. How, Jay, how you see to it?
Deepak, I agree with obviously Vijay and Lata and Puneet. But a lot of these B2B partners are two categories. One is the big players like IBM and those. So what's expected out of these big players is the B2B side is not just a kind of come and implement the solutions or recommend those and those kind of platforms. But now with the digital transformation, we are looking at like overall strategic partners, wherein they create this overall ecosystem of not delivering the solutions, adding value to the top line, and also making sure they are part of a journey for 3 to 5 years wherein you want to grow leaps and bounds. That's one part of it. Second, which you have seen is there are a lot of boutique players who can fill in the gap into these ecosystems. I think one of the areas can be these boutique players and these big players. If they tag along somewhere in the overall value chain, it can create a lot of add-on and benefits to the organizations. That's third is more than SLA. Some of the players, they are very much keen to drive the efficiency as well as drive revenue. So like one of the applications which we are evaluating, I won't name that, but when I was talking to them on the licensing model, the implementation model, with the typical questions it was there. Channel where the site license, SaaS based, on-premise on the things. And eventually he told me one thing. He was so confident with solution. He said, let's do one thing. I will link my license money to a revenue, additional revenue generation which can happen to your organization. Post this. If you can do it, I will take the percentage out of your additional revenue. So that kind of confidence, if these B2B players can bring on the table, it really gives a lot of food for thought.
Okay. Rishi, how do you see exactly on your perspective or your view of seeing the business?
Yes. So no, I've been very fortunate to have led teams globally and also had some global partnerships. I have a slightly, lot of my points will resonate with you, but I have a slightly different view as well. Let me first share the different view. So I think the word here is partner. And whereas, we have been using a lot of these vendors as suppliers to fill these short-term gaps. And that creates, to be honest, a lot of, friction in the whole process. We are also, to be honest, if I look at the equation carefully, till your vendor, till your partner, supposedly partner, understands your end customer, there is no way they can come up to a partner level. They won't be able to do proper fulfillment if they do not understand your end customers. And the one way to make them understand the end customers and make them part of the whole process is actually get them through the whole journey of concept, customer discovery, problem discovery, customer discovery, and then go through the whole design, delivery, all those phases. Whereas we tend to bring them on board only for certain specific roles. And that can become very challenging at times. And neither are there incentives today we as an industry have put forward which go towards sharing the value that we are creating for end customers. If I'm creating a new business model, let's say, and I have critical technology partners who are helping me go into the market, what is it that I'm willing to offer extra besides the money for their time and skill set? Am I going to offer, for example, a percentage stake in the business, the new business that I'm going to create? That can change the behavior quite a lot. Like in HR, people always discuss, if you want to change the behavior of the employees, put your compensation metrics around the behavior you want. And I would argue that even in the partnership, B2B partnership, if you want this game to be lifted up, to be honest, towards the value creation, some of our metrics, incentive metrics have to change in the ecosystem. Otherwise, this will be a constant struggle of, push and pull, what we ask versus, what we desire, and we see the short term and we see the gaps out there. So that's my perspective, how this partnership needs to evolve from both sides. In short, basically our partners need to understand our end customers, which means they need to insert deeply inside the domain and our value chain. And we, who are pulling in the partners to help us, we need to think through very carefully what incentives, what metrics we are lining up to basically get their commitment, a deeper commitment to help us succeed and not just make consulting money. So.
Wonderful. So I think we have a wonderful input. And what I could see that many of our CIOs who are working on the extended time, but I have to get up appreciate at 3 o'clock. Okay, so it shows that all technologists, CIO, CTO, they are geared to face any kind of challenges and opportunities. To summarize that, if I'll say digital transformation brings a newer opportunity for the partners, if I would request to speak in one sentence, how you will summarize the thing in one sentence? Mr. Sethi, you can summarize in one sentence. That will be the headline for you.
So digital transformation is here to stay. You need to start immediately and focus on value to the business. At the same time, also focus on cybersecurity a lot.
Thank you. Puneet. Your sound, you're unmute. Puneet, you have to unmute.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So
please.
business or digital transformation is the new normal. What I can say.
Okay. Lata.
I would say that digital transformation is here to stay. It will keep transforming, and therefore the partners need to keep building skills as we move. It's never static. It always has to be constant.
Thank you. Jay.
I would say digital transformation is moving from wireframes and papers to now into actual implementation, and that's kind of accelerated. So that's one part, and we have to go into it with no compromise on security.
Wonderful. Rishi, can you?
So, I think the one line forward would be creating a greater value addition for our customers. I think if we take care of that, then everything, whether it's a digital transformation, B2B partnerships, they all have to shape up, I would say.
Thank you. It's a wonderful input, gentlemen, and thanks for your sharing time. I am sure all the partner community in the event will enjoy and take some key aways from the discussion. Thank you again for your sharing valuable time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sahu and all the panelists. The discussion provided a platform to explore the growing opportunities for the partners in the country. And it is really a wonderful session to note from the panelists on various opportunities on the plate.